Friends, imagine a world on the brink. A world where the greatest industrial power on Earth finds itself on its knees, its most potent weapons sinking beneath the waves, one after another. Picture the despair, the fear, the chilling realization that everything you believed about your own strength might be a terrifying illusion. This isn't some distant historical footnote. This is the harrowing reality America faced in 1942, a year that saw the very pillars of its naval might crumble with shocking, relentless speed. The Pacific Ocean, a vast and unforgiving stage, was rapidly becoming a graveyard for American carriers. October 27, 1942. Dawn. The sea, usually a canvas of endless blue, was painted in fiery reds and oranges, reflecting the catastrophe unfolding. Commander Edward P. Parker, a man hardened by war, gripped the rail of the USS Northampton, his knuckles white, his gaze fixed on the agonizing sight of the USS Hornet, America's proud aircraft carrier, succumbing to the inferno. Flames from ruptured fuel tanks turned the water into a vast, shimmering mirror of destruction. Stretching for miles, a horrifying beacon of American naval collapse. His personal log, a sanctuary for thoughts too dangerous to voice aloud, held words that, if discovered, would have earned him a court-martial for defeatism. 4 carriers in 10 months. At this rate, we'll have nothing left by Christmas. The raw, unvarnished truth of his entry spoke volumes about the desperation gripping the fleet. He had just witnessed the 4th American fleet carrier vanish in a single year. The USS Lexington, gone at Coral Sea on May 8th. The USS Yorktown, a hero patched up only to be lost at Midway on June 7th. The USS Wasp, torpedoed off Guadalcanal on September 15th. And now, the Hornet at Santa Cruz. 4 carriers. 4 titans of steel and aviation, lost in less than a year. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once dismissed by American intelligence as mere inferior copyists, incapable of true innovation, had systematically dismantled over half of America's carrier force in the Pacific. It was a tactical and strategic nightmare, a cascade of losses that threatened to shatter morale and fundamentally alter the course of the war. How could a nation recover from such a devastating blow? How could it even hope to continue fighting, much less win, when its most vital assets were disappearing at an unsustainable rate? The numbers were stark, almost unbelievable in their grim finality. America had entered the war with just 7 fleet carriers in the Pacific. Japan with 10. Every admiral understood the grim arithmetic. America couldn't afford to trade evenly, let alone lose ships faster than the enemy. Yet that was precisely what was happening. While American ships were sinking, Japanese shipyards, from Yokosuka to Kure, hummed with activity, adding new carriers to their formidable fleet. The imbalance was growing, not shrinking. It seemed inevitable that the scales of naval power would tip irrevocably in Japan's favor. This moment of maximum despair, this abyss of doubt and defeat, was a crucible. It was the point where the conventional wisdom of warfare met the extraordinary power of human ingenuity and collective will. What neither Commander Parker nor the Japanese High Command knew was that, thousands of miles away, in a shipyard in Newport News, Virginia, a welder named Margaret Thompson was about to begin a night shift. Her work, and the work of millions like her, would not only defy Commander Parker's dire predictions, but would rewrite the very mathematics of victory itself. This wasn't just about battleships and bombs. It was about welding torches, assembly lines, and the sheer, unbridled productive fury of a democracy that, though bruised, was finally awakening to the true scope of the war. The promise of victory in that dark hour seemed a distant, improbable dream. But the collapse of American carrier power in 1942 was about to trigger a response so overwhelming, so utterly unimaginable, that Japanese naval officers would later describe it as fighting not just an enemy fleet, but the very stars themselves. They'd say, "No matter how many you destroyed, more appeared, an endless constellation of steel and aircraft." Within 3 short years, American shipyards would launch 14 Essex-class fleet carriers that saw combat, a number exceeding Japan's entire carrier production for the entire war. This wasn't a tactical brilliance or a technological breakthrough in the traditional sense. It was something far more fundamental. It was the complete mobilization of an industrial democracy, a transformation that would turn housewives into welders, farm boys into shipfitters, and an entire nation into what Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, had feared most: an arsenal of unlimited productive capacity. Let's contextualize this gathering catastrophe. The disaster had truly begun on May 8, 1942, in the Coral Sea. The USS Lexington, Lady Lex, one of America's 2 giant pre-war carriers, converted from battlecruiser hulls, absorbed 2 torpedo hits and 3 bomb strikes from Japanese carrier aircraft. Despite heroic damage control efforts that initially saved the ship, the invisible threat of gasoline vapors from ruptured aviation fuel tanks triggered massive secondary explosions. Lady Lex, a symbol of American naval power, went down, taking with her 216 of her crew. It was America's first fleet carrier loss of the war, a brutal initiation into the harsh realities of modern naval combat. Captain Frederick Sherman, Lexington's commanding officer, would later testify before Congress, recounting the stark reality. "We went to war with 7 fleet carriers in the Pacific. The Japanese started with 10. Every admiral knew the arithmetic. We couldn't afford to trade evenly, much less lose them faster than the enemy." His words echoed the palpable fear that permeated the highest levels of command. The second blow fell just a month later, a cruel twist of fate following one of America's greatest victories. On June 7, 1942, the USS Yorktown, a veteran of Coral Sea and the crucial turning point at Midway, succumbed. Heroically patched together in just 48 hours at Pearl Harbor after her Coral Sea damage, she had played an indispensable role in sinking 4 Japanese carriers at Midway, effectively breaking the back of Japan's offensive capability. Yet, in the aftermath of that strategic triumph, she was found by Japanese submarine I-168 and struck by torpedoes. Though Midway marked a strategic victory of immense proportions, America had lost one of her precious few fleet carriers. It was a bitter reminder that even in victory, the cost was staggering and deeply personal. September 15th brought the third catastrophe. The USS Wasp, operating off Guadalcanal, a crucial island whose fate hung in the balance, took 3 torpedoes from Japanese submarine I-19. The carrier burned for hours, a funeral pyre on the open sea, before finally being scuttled by the American destroyer Lansdowne. Of the 7 fleet carriers available in the Pacific at the war's start, America had now lost 3. A year of conflict, and nearly half of the pre-war strength was gone. The sense of dread was becoming suffocating. Each loss was not just a ship. It was hundreds of lives, thousands of hours of training, and a monumental investment of national resources. It was a tangible erosion of confidence. Then came what many feared was the knockout blow. October 26th to 27th, 1942, the Battle of Santa Cruz. The USS Hornet, veteran of the Doolittle Raid and Midway, fell victim to coordinated Japanese dive bomber and torpedo plane attacks. Desperate efforts to save her, including a valiant attempt to tow the burning carrier to safety, proved futile. Advancing Japanese surface forces, relentless and unforgiving, forced her abandonment. Japanese destroyers Makigumo and Akigumo, like grim reapers, finished what their aircraft had started in the early morning hours of October 27th. 4 carriers down. In the hallowed halls of Washington, Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, a man known for his stern demeanor, faced Congress with numbers that chilled even the most seasoned politicians. "Gentlemen," he declared, "we have one operational fleet carrier in the Pacific, the Enterprise. She faces 10 Japanese carriers. Simple mathematics suggests we have already lost the war." His words were not hyperbole. They were a raw, unvarnished assessment of an undeniably perilous situation. The implications were catastrophic. Control of the Pacific, the ability to project power, the very survival of Allied forces in the region, all hung by a thread. A single valiant carrier against a seemingly insurmountable tide. But what Admiral King didn't know, what no one in that room could possibly comprehend, was the colossal force already stirring across the nation. He didn't know about Margaret Thompson, the welder whose story we briefly touched upon, or the 1.7 million workers who would flood into American shipyards by 1944. He didn't know about Henry Kaiser, the industrialist whose visionary leadership was about to reduce Liberty ship construction time from 230 days to an astonishing 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. He didn't know that American shipyards, which had launched a mere 1 fleet carrier in 1941, were about to achieve the utterly impossible. The transformation, this mobilization miracle, didn't begin in top-secret military planning rooms or with brilliant battlefield strategists. It began, far more prosaically, in the accounting offices and on the shop floors of places like Newport News Shipbuilding. On December 8, 1941, just 1 day after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, Yarda Supervisor Clay Bedford called an emergency meeting with his foreman. His words were a manifesto for a new era. "Forget everything you know about shipbuilding," he announced. "We're going to build the carriers like Ford builds cars." It was a radical departure, a conceptual leap from artisanal craftsmanship to mass production. For generations, shipbuilding had been a painstaking process, a symphony of highly specialized trades, each piece meticulously crafted and fitted. Bedford was proposing to shatter that tradition. The revolution, however, often springs from the most unexpected sources. It started with a simple observation from Helen Matthews, a former seamstress who had just been hired as part of the emergency expansion. Watching skilled workers laboriously rivet hull plates into place, a process requiring immense precision and time, she innocently asked her supervisor, "Why don't you sew it together like fabric, one continuous seam instead of thousands of dots?" The supervisor, initially amused by the seemingly naive question, paused. The laugh died on his lips. He understood. Welding, instead of riveting, could cut assembly time by 75%. This wasn't just a marginal improvement, it was a paradigm shift. Welding required different skills, simpler skills, skills that could be taught to anyone in days, rather than the years required to train a master riveter. It democratized the labor force, opening doors to millions who had never before imagined themselves builders of ships. This seemingly small insight from a seamstress was a gigantic leap for industrial efficiency, a flash of brilliance born from a fresh perspective. The implications were profound. Riveting was a labor-intensive, noisy, and slow process. Each rivet had to be heated, inserted, and then hammered into place by a team. Welding, by contrast, created a stronger, more watertight seam with fewer workers and in less time. This wasn't just about speed, it was about efficiency and strength. The ability to quickly train a new workforce in welding meant that the vast, untapped reservoir of American labor, women, minorities, men previously considered unsuitable for heavy industry, could be brought into the shipyards, multiplying productive capacity exponentially. This was the genesis of the production explosion. By the summer of 1943, the fruits of this new philosophy were becoming dramatically apparent. Essex-class carriers, mighty symbols of American power, were rolling off the ways at a pace that defied comprehension. The USS Essex herself, the lead ship of her class, had been laid down on April 28, 1941, and commissioned on December 31, 1942. 20 months from keel to combat readiness. An impressive feat, certainly, but this was just the beginning. The systems were still being refined, the workforce still learning. The real innovation was in the constant search for better, faster methods. At the Brooklyn Navy Yard, shipfitter First Class Giuseppe Diageo, a cousin of the famous baseball player, led a crew that developed a groundbreaking new technique for installing aircraft elevators. Traditionally, these complex mechanisms were built in place, piece by painstaking piece, a time-consuming and difficult process. Diageo's team, however, innovated. They pre-assembled entire elevator platforms on shore in a controlled environment, complete with all their intricate machinery. Then, with massive cranes, they lifted these colossal pre-built units and slotted them into position on the carrier hull. Time saved? 6 weeks per carrier. 6 weeks. Multiplied across dozens of ships, this represented hundreds of weeks of accelerated construction. Weeks that translated directly into earlier combat readiness. The techniques pioneered at Richmond by the visionary Henry Kaiser, initially for Liberty ships, spread like wildfire throughout the entire shipbuilding industry. Prefabrication became the mantra. Instead of assembling a ship component by component on the slipway, entire sections, deck houses, bulkheads, engine room modules, were assembled in specialized production areas. They could be built on their sides or even upside down, allowing welders easier access and stronger welds. What had previously taken 1,000 workers a month now took 200 workers a week. The efficiency gains were not just incremental, they were exponential, transforming the entire industrial landscape. The numbers began to accumulate with frightening speed, each new ship a testament to this revolutionary approach. The USS Yorktown, CV-10, laid down December 1, 1941, was commissioned April 15, 1943. The USS Intrepid, laid down December 1, 1941, commissioned August 16, 1943. The USS Hornet, CV-12, laid down August 3, 1942, commissioned November 29, 1943. The USS Franklin, laid down December 7, 1942, commissioned January 31, 1944. Each launching became faster, a visible acceleration of industrial might. Philip Kellogg, a welder at Bethlehem Steel's Four River Shipyard, kept a diary that captured this incredible acceleration from the ground up. His entries offer a personal glimpse into the heart of the miracle. January 1943. We're launching a carrier every 60 days. A monumental achievement already. But then, June 1943, every 45 days. The pace quickened, and finally, December 1943, every 30 days. The Japs must think we're using magic. Kellogg's simple words encapsulated the disbelief and awe, not just from the enemy, but from the very workers themselves, who were witnessing and participating in a scale of production previously thought impossible. But what was this magic? As Kellogg himself hinted, the true magic wasn't some arcane secret. It was people. The human wave that swept into American shipyards was unprecedented. By April 1943, an astonishing 40% of the laborers on Kaiser's shipways and prefabrication facilities were women. Women who, just months before, might have been homemakers, seamstresses, or factory workers in unrelated industries, now donned welding masks and overalls, learning to cut and join steel with precision and speed. At the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Emma Rodriguez, a Mexican-American mother of 3 who had never held a tool larger than a sewing needle, became the fastest riveter in the yard. She could drive 30 rivets in a minute, each one perfect, a testament to raw talent, fierce determination, and the urgent need of a nation at war. Her story, multiplied by hundreds of thousands, speaks to the immense, untapped potential of a diverse workforce. African American workers, previously barred from skilled shipyard positions due to pervasive discrimination, flooded into the yards after Executive Order 8802, prohibiting discrimination in defense industries, began to take effect. This wasn't just about civil rights. It was about national survival. The war effort demanded every pair of hands, every ounce of skill. James Washington, a sharecropper from Alabama, a man whose life before the war was likely defined by the cycles of planting and harvest, became a master pipe fitter at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. He installed the fuel lines on 5 carriers, each one finished faster than the last. His journey from the fields of Alabama to the heart of America's industrial might represented a seismic shift in American society, proving unequivocally that skill and dedication knew no racial boundaries. These workers weren't just building ships. They were racing against death itself. Every day without carriers meant more American sailors and Marines dying on islands across the Pacific, facing an enemy with air superiority. The stakes were impossibly high. Posted on every shipyard wall were grim, yet inspiring photographs from the fleet. USS Enterprise fights alone. She needs sisters. Build them now. These weren't just slogans. They were direct calls to action, deeply personal appeals that infused every rivet, every weld, with a sense of urgent purpose. The workers knew their labor was a direct lifeline to the front lines, a tangible contribution to the survival of their sons, brothers, and husbands. The speed and scale of production came not just from human effort, no matter how dedicated, but from a concurrent technology revolution in production techniques. At the New York Naval Yard, engineers developed modular construction to an unprecedented degree. Instead of building a carrier from the keel up, piece by individual piece, they built entire sections, sometimes as large as a small house, complete with wiring, plumbing, and ventilation systems already installed. These self-contained modules were then assembled like giant building blocks, dramatically reducing on-site construction time and complexity. Further streamlining came through the aggressive use of highly standardized components. This meant that every carrier, wherever possible, used identical pumps, identical electrical panels, identical fittings. Parts manufactured in Detroit, far from any shipyard, could be installed in carriers being built in Newport News, Brooklyn, or Philadelphia without modification. This seemingly simple concept of interchangeability, borrowed heavily from the automotive industry, was revolutionary for shipbuilding, reducing the need for custom fabrication and speeding up assembly to an astonishing degree. Construction time for the fastest builds plummeted to as little as 14 months. The meticulous, almost artisanal approach to shipbuilding was replaced by an industrial symphony of precision and speed. The result of this combined human and technological effort was the Essex Swarm. The Essex class would become the most significant class of warships in American naval history, not just for their numbers, but for their capabilities. These weren't merely replacements for lost carriers. They were bigger, faster, and more capable than anything that had come before. Each displaced 2,700 tons, could carry an imposing 90 to 100 aircraft, and could steam at a blistering 33 knots, faster than most destroyers. They were floating airfields, self-contained bastions of offensive power, ready to project American might across vast oceanic distances. The Japanese noticed immediately. Their intelligence reports, initially viewed with skepticism, soon turned into chilling confirmations. Commander Masatake Yokomiya, air staff officer with the Japanese Combined Fleet, wrote in his diary after receiving new intelligence. The Americans are building carriers faster than we can train pilots. Each new carrier is superior to anything we possess. We are not fighting the same Navy that we attacked at Pearl Harbor. His words captured the growing horror and the dawning realization that their early tactical successes had merely provoked a sleeping giant, whose industrial capacity was waking with a vengeance. By March 1944, American shipyards had achieved the impossible, launching Essex-class carriers at a rate that exceeded the combined carrier production of every other nation on Earth. It was an industrial phenomenon that beggared belief, a testament to an unprecedented national mobilization. While the major naval yards focused on the mighty fleet carriers, Henry Kaiser, the quintessential American industrialist, revolutionized the construction of escort carriers, the smaller, more nimble jeep carriers. These unsung heroes would provide vital air cover for invasion fleets, hunt submarines, and ferry aircraft to the front lines. Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard alone would produce an astonishing 50 escort carriers, leveraging the exact same high-speed techniques developed for Liberty ships. The escort carrier USS Casablanca, lead ship of the most numerous class of carriers ever built, went from keel laying to commissioning in less than 8 months. By comparison, the Japanese escort carrier Shinano, converted from a passenger liner, took 2 years to complete. The contrast in production rates wasn't just significant, it was existential. Behind every rivet, every weld, every massive steel plate lay the intricate, sprawling network of the supply chain symphony, stretching across the entire American continent. The steel for carrier flight decks, specialized and immense, came from Pittsburgh, where mills ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, churning out metal like never before. The aluminum for aircraft, a critical component for the thousands of planes these carriers would deploy, flowed from Alcoa plants in Tennessee, consuming more electricity than entire cities. In Akron, Ohio, The Goodyear plant produced the specialized, immensely strong, arresting gear cables, each one capable of safely stopping a 12,000-pound fighter traveling at 100 miles per hour on a tiny deck. Plant manager William Davis pushed production from a mere 10 cables per month in 1942 to an incredible 200 per month by 1944. This wasn't just about building ships, it was about building an entire ecosystem of war, from raw materials to finished components, all orchestrated with a singular, urgent purpose. But ships without crews were useless, and carriers without trained pilots were merely enormous, vulnerable targets. The solution to this gargantuan training pipeline challenge came from the ingenious Captain Daniel Gallery, who proposed an audacious plan: use the Great Lakes as a training ground. The USS Wolverine and USS Sable, paddle wheel steamers converted into training carriers, operated from Chicago's Navy Pier. These unlikely warships, plying the fresh waters of Lake Michigan, became the unsung heroes of naval aviation. By 1944, these two ships were qualifying 500 pilots per month, churning out aviators at a pace that was simply unimaginable to any other nation. This rapid training was as crucial as the ship production. Without it, the new carriers would have sat empty, their potential unrealized. In Tokyo, the Japanese perspective shifted from aggressive confidence to a growing horror. The Imperial Naval Staff, meticulous in their intelligence gathering, watched the incoming reports with disbelief and dread. Captain Toshikazu Omi, operations officer for the combined fleet, later testified to the sheer scale of American production. "We knew America would build ships to replace their losses. We estimated they might build 6 or 7 fleet carriers by 1945. The actual number was beyond comprehension." Their carefully calculated projections, based on pre-war industrial norms and their own capabilities, had been utterly shattered. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commanding the Japanese carrier force at the catastrophic Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, faced the stark reality of this new American power. He sailed into battle with 6 carriers. Arrayed against him were 9 American fleet carriers and 8 light carriers. The numerical disparity was so vast, the qualitative difference so profound, that Ozawa later wrote, "It was not a battle, it was an execution." The once proud Japanese carrier fleet, which had dominated the early war, was decimated. Its remaining pilots, many inexperienced, sent to their doom against an overwhelming, well-trained foe. This battle was not just a naval engagement. It was a resounding demonstration of industrial supremacy turned into military might. By January 1945, the production peak had been reached, and American shipyards had achieved a rhythm that seemed truly impossible just 3 years prior. The Brooklyn Navy Yard was working on 3 carriers simultaneously. Newport News had carriers in various stages of construction on 6 different slipways. The sheer scale was a visible, tangible testament to a nation fully committed to victory. The USS Lake Champlain established the ultimate record among wartime completions, commissioned June 3, 1945, after just 15 months of construction. From raw materials to a fully operational warship in just over a year, it was a feat unparalleled in history. This incredible speed, however, came with a human cost, a poignant reminder that war, even behind the lines, demanded sacrifice. Shipyard accidents, often gruesome and unavoidable in the rush of construction, killed over 3,000 workers during the war. These were not combat deaths, but industrial casualties, men and women who gave their lives on the home front. Margaret O'Brien, one of the countless individuals who suffered, lost her husband when a crane cable snapped at Forey River Shipyard. The very next week, she returned to work, taking his place on the welding crew. Her words, uttered with grim determination to her crew, captured the fierce spirit that drove them. Every ship we don't build means more gold stars in windows. The human cost and triumph were inextricably linked. The shock of victory for the Japanese was profound and undeniable. When the Japanese surrender delegation arrived aboard the USS Missouri on September 2, 1945, they had to sail past an American fleet that defied imagination. Over 100 carriers of all types, fleet, light, and escort, filled Tokyo Bay and the surrounding waters. More carriers than all other nations combined had built in the entire history of naval aviation. Commander Tamichihara, one of Japan's most decorated destroyer captains, expressed the almost existential bewilderment. We had sunk 4 of their carriers in 1942, and they had replaced each one 3 times over. The sheer scale of what they encountered was beyond any pre-war calculation, any wartime expectation. The production statistics tell a story that goes beyond mere numbers. They speak of an industrial and national transformation. The final accounting of Essex-class carriers that saw combat in World War II is a litany of names, each one representing thousands of lives and millions of man-hours. USS Essex, CV-9, December 31, 1942. USS Yorktown, CV-10, April 15, 1943. USS Intrepid, CV-11, August 16, 1943. USS Hornet, CV-12, November 29, 1943. USS Franklin, CV-13, January 31, 1944. USS Ticonderoga, CV-14, May 8, 1944. USS Randolph, CV-15, October 9, 1944. USS Lexington, CV-16, February 17, 1943. USS Bunker Hill, CV-17, May 24, 1943. USS Wasp, CV-18, November 24, 1943. USS Hancock, CV-19, April 15, 1944. USS Bennington, CV-20, August 6, 1944. US Bonhomme Richard, CV-31, November 26, 1944. US Shangri-La, CV-38, September 15, 1944. And this incredible list doesn't even include additional carriers commissioned, but seeing no combat, like USS Boxer, USS Lake Champlain, and USS Antietam, or several more commissioned after the war ended. Crucially, this count also excludes 9 Independence-class light carriers, built on cruiser hulls, or over 100 escort carriers produced during the same period. The total numerical supremacy achieved was mind-boggling. A true numerical supremacy that fundamentally altered the balance of global power. This technology transfer extended far beyond the war itself. The revolution in shipbuilding transformed American industry permanently. Techniques developed for wartime production, modular construction, automated welding processes, the entire philosophy of assembly line shipbuilding, became standard practice across various manufacturing sectors in the post-war era. Workers trained in these shipyards, having gained invaluable skills and experience, became the backbone of post-war American industry, carrying their expertise into automobile factories, construction, and emerging technologies. Women who had learned to weld discovered they could master any industrial task, shattering long-held stereotypes about gender roles in the workplace. African Americans, who had been restricted to menial jobs before the war, proved unequivocally they possessed the same skills and dedication as anyone else when finally given the opportunity, laying crucial groundwork for future civil rights advancements. The strategic impact was equally profound. By 1945, American carrier production had reached levels that exceeded even operational needs. Ships were being completed faster than crews could be trained, an almost comical reversal of the dire situation just 3 years prior. Admiral William Halsey, a blunt and experienced commander, testified to Congress in 1946. "We went from having too few carriers to having more than we could use. No nation in history has ever produced combat vessels at such a rate." This wasn't just victory, it was dominance, built piece by piece, weld by weld. The workers' legacy endured. In 1985, on the 40th anniversary of VJ Day, a reunion was held at Newport News Shipbuilding. Over 5,000 former workers attended, a sea of aging faces, each with a story of sacrifice and triumph. Margaret Thompson, the welder from our opening, now 67 years old, stood before the crowd, her voice carrying the weight of history. "They call us the greatest generation now," she said. "We weren't great. We were angry. The Japanese sank our ships, killed our boys. We answered the only way we knew how. We built more ships than they could imagine. Every rivet we drove said, 'Remember Pearl Harbor.'" Her words were a powerful, humble testament to the collective spirit that had fueled the miracle. This carrier-building program transformed not just military capability, but the entire American economy and society. The economic and social revolution it sparked was immense. Towns like Richmond, California, saw their populations explode, from 23,000 to 130,000 in just 3 years, as people flocked to the shipyards for work. The money paid to these shipyard workers, over $3 billion in wages, flowed through the economy, fueling growth and helping to build the American middle class that would define the post-war era. The shipyards, in their urgent need for labor, broke down social barriers that had existed for generations, proving that women could do industrial work and that African Americans possessed the same skills as anyone else when given the opportunity. This was not just a military victory, it was a societal metamorphosis. By August 1945, the numerical supremacy was truly staggering. The United States Navy operated 14 Essex-class fleet carriers that had seen combat, 3 additional Essex-class carriers commissioned but not yet in combat, 9 Independence-class light carriers, and an astonishing 71 escort carriers, plus pre-war carriers still in service. This immense force stood in stark contrast to Japan's mere 6 operational carriers, most without trained pilots, and Britain's 19 carriers of all types. The scales had not just tipped, they had shattered. The ultimate testament to this achievement came in 1962, when Rear Admiral Hideo Yano of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force visited the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, where many Essex-class carriers had been built. Standing where the USS Yorktown had been launched, a monument to American industrial might, Yano spoke through an interpreter, his words laced with respect and a hint of lingering awe. "We knew you were building ships, but we never imagined this scale. How do you fight a nation that can build in 1 yard what we built in our entire empire? We didn't lose to your Navy. We lost to your factories, your workers, your determination to produce beyond all rational limits." It was a humbling admission, acknowledging that the true battlefield had been the factory floor, the true weapon, the tireless hands of American labor. Admiral Chester Nimitz, the revered Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, offered the final reckoning. His definitive assessment remains one of the most powerful summaries of the war. The war was decided in 1943, not by any battle, but by the launching of new carriers. When we could lose a carrier and have two replacements already at sea, while Japan could not replace any losses, the outcome was mathematically certain. His words cut through the complexity of strategic maneuvers and tactical brilliance, boiling victory down to its most fundamental component: raw, overwhelming productive power. Today, the legacy of that production miracle lives on. The techniques pioneered in 1942 to 1945 remain standard in shipbuilding, a testament to their enduring efficiency and effectiveness. But perhaps the most important legacy, the deepest lesson, is the demonstration of what democratic societies can achieve when unified in purpose. In just 36 months, America went from having 4 carriers sunk and facing potential defeat to possessing an overwhelming carrier supremacy that made victory not just possible, but inevitable. The workers who achieved this miracle proved, beyond any doubt, that democracy's greatest weapon isn't solely military might, but its productive capacity. It is the ability of free people to outbuild, to outproduce, and ultimately to overwhelm tyranny. The transformation from 4 carriers lost to 14 Essex-class carriers in combat stands as history's greatest example of an industrial response to a military crisis, a testament to the power of a people united. Those workers, the men and women who built these titans of steel, are nearly all gone now. But their achievement remains, etched in history, a permanent beacon of what humanity can accomplish in its darkest hour. When fascism threatened to extinguish freedom, American workers responded with the greatest surge of productive power ever witnessed. The 4 carriers lost in 1942, Lexington, Yorktown, Wasp, and Hornet, were not just replaced, they were multiplied. Each new carrier was superior to what was lost, each one a testament to democracy's capacity to transform disaster into triumph. In the end, Japan didn't lose to American strategy or tactics alone. They lost to Margaret Thompson and her welding torch. They lost to Helen Matthews's simple question. They lost to millions of Americans from every walk of life, who proved that democracy's ultimate strength lies in the unlimited productive capacity of a free people united in purpose. From 4 carriers lost to 14 Essex-class carriers in combat, the numbers tell a story of transformation that stands as history's greatest testament to what free people can achieve when their freedom is threatened. They didn't just build ships, they built victory, they built freedom, and they built the future. Their legacy floats eternal, not just in the memories of those who lived through it, but in the enduring words inscribed on the memorial at Newport News Shipbuilding. Here, American workers answered tyranny with steel, fascism with freedom, and defeat with the greatest production miracle in human history. This is not just history. It is a timeless lesson for us all.